Hi, welcome back to class, and we're on Module 5, so we're 5 weeks into the class, so we're almost, actually, at the end of this week, we'll be about a third of the way done up the semester. So what we're going to do is, we're going to move on through the beginning of this book still, before we start getting to particular ethnic groups. This section, we're going to look at ethnic patterns, and so we're going to look at the patterns of ethnic relations, and this will also get into looking at assimilation and the concept of pluralism. So it's a very good follow-up to last week. So this is pretty straightforward for this week. It won't be too much really to watch. There's about a 30-minute podcast and an 8-minute TED Talk. And so it's a little lighter of a week than you're probably used to. However, the quiz questions are a little more complicated, so I do hope you spend more time with your, a little more time allocated for your quiz to do this week. So I just want to give you fair warning on that. So this week you're going to read Chapter 4, and then you're going to start responding to your Module 4 discussions. By now, you should understand how this works. Log on at least 3 separate days. Do a post to each discussion thread. So there's 2 threads most weeks. In fact, I think every week this semester there'll be two threads. So 2 responses per day, 1 for each thread. Log off your computer or log off the discussion. Give it a day or so. Go back and do 1 more in each thread. Then give it another day, and then 1 more on the thread. And the way it's set up this way is hopefully you guys are starting to get into some discussions where you actually have a thread. And so what I'll do is we'll look here. And like I said, I have a different view than you do. But what I really want to see is numerous threads. So we'll go to a past week, and I'm just going to go here and see how it should look. And hopefully this helps you out a little bit. So a lot of people are just doing these initial responses. What works out better is when you have a response to a response. And so as we go down here, you got one here. So we had someone respond to an initial thread and then a response back. You can take this response and respond to that as well. So by coming back every few days, we should see more things that look like this as we go through the class. This is a discussion. These threads can keep going on forever, so you can keep responding back to the people who respond to you. That's the point of doing it this way. So I think that's a little tip that should help you. And try to respond to each other. Just that way you don't have to be logged on for a super long time. It doesn't have to be a unique response to a different thread each time you log on. You can go ahead and, like I said, respond to someone's question on your response. So if you have any questions, make sure you reach out to me, and we'll try to get this straightened out. But I know at the beginning of the semester, people are a little hesitant to realize how that's going to work. So you should be able to respond to these a little easier. We're going to have a podcast on a sculpture that's in Birmingham, Alabama, and a Dropbox assignment on that podcast. So this is a follow-up to the prior podcast from Malcolm Gladwell. There'll be a quiz on Chapter 4, and like I said, please give yourself more time for this. It's an open book quiz. If you give yourself proper time, it shouldn't be too difficult, but the questions this week are focusing on some more complicated theories I think it's some of the more complicated theories in the book. So hopefully you take my advice and you give yourself more time for this so you can get a better grade. Then there's, of course, 2 discussion posts, and going through the class will show you what we have here. The podcast is right here. It's the Foot Soldier of Birmingham. So again, it's a revisionist history podcast. And as you go through the page, you're able to see the artwork that this is discussing. So there's the pictures here and a little bit more information. So this podcast is great. There's a lot of different subjects that come across in here. But to listen to the podcast, you're going to hit the play button, hit play, and you'll have the podcast start. It takes, I believe, 30 minutes or so to listen to the podcast, but it's a really interesting discussion that he has on there. So we have the quiz, and I will have the date correct for this. And here is a TED Talk. It's a short TED Talk, and it's focusing on this gentleman's, what he noticed about assimilation. And so one thing I think it's important to hear in these classes is a discussion from somebody who might not be a typical scholar that you see in a sociology video. And so we're going to have someone discussing their experience with assimilation and dealing with some of the struggles that they had. And we'll have 2 questions on this week. One will be on this podcast. And so you're going to talk about his discussion here, and I want you to give me your main takeaway from this video, or to give the class your main takeaway. And then you're going to have a current event discussion. So I want you to discuss a recent example of some of the things that are discussed in this chapter. This can go back a few years. When I say current event, you can go back 5 years or so and look at some things that have gone on around the world and discuss this. I think in talking about some of these more little more vivid discussions, it's nice if you could tie it to something that you pick out of the news or of current events. So this should be a very interesting discussion. And again, remember, this is a sociology class, so we're not going to get into the extreme politics of things. Of course, politics do interplay with sociology, but I do want you to find something that you can discuss here. And again, you can go global with this, so your discussion can go outside of America if you feel like, and look to other parts of the world. And that's really about it. This is a fairly straightforward week. I'm sure you're noticing as my weeks go on, I have a pretty standard way I do things. There's a quiz most weeks, a discussion pretty much every week. In fact, I generally don't skip a discussion because I think it's an area that's very rich for showing content knowledge and growth. And there's usually a drop box or 2. So you get those done every week, and you should have no problem here. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Send me an email on D2L. And if, like I said, you have any questions about grading or why you received a certain grade, go ahead and ask me, and hopefully we can get it addressed so you understand better and we move forward. Either that, or if I made a mistake, feel free to point it out to me. All right, well, thank you so much and have a great week.